Okay, no,
And then everything is working. Mic is working.
yeah, it's green.
Oh, all right, we're gonna call this meeting of the Technical Review Committee to order. It is February 20th at 1:30 p.m. First item on the agenda is the determination of a quorum. I do look around the room. We have sufficient number of TRC members present. The approval of, emergency evacuation plan.
We should probably say our names, I'm sorry, just for the benefit of Lori.
Oh, sure. Yeah, why don't we do that? Because the minutes are being picked up and our new minutes person has got to get to know us. I'm Doug McLean. I am the planning director and the administrative officer for the town of Coventry.
Josh Chase, Planning Commission.
Joe Levesque, town engineer.
Alex Berardo, principal planner.
Ron Flynn, Planning Commission Chair.
Kevin McGee, Director of Public Works.
Frank Brown, Fire Chief.
Great. Emergency evacuation plan. We will be heading out that door and then right outside the building. Approval of minutes. We do not have minutes back from our previous January meeting, so we will just add that to the next TRC agenda and pick those up at our next opportunity. We don't work, this group doesn't typically work based on making decisions on its agenda by motion. In general, this group is a staff group, but would we have consensus on the idea of taking the agenda out of order and doing item number 4.2, which is the proposed equipment garage commercial storage building first? That is the project in which it is being, comments are going to the administrative officer. And that's the one that we do want Ron here. The others we do not need Ron here for. Is that consensus around that?
Yes.
All right. So we'll look at item 4.2. And again, this is a proposed equipment garage with the owner applicant Baird Properties LLC at 53 Reservoir Road. I'd like to give an opportunity to go around the table and provide any comments that TRC members may have. And if you had a chance to email these comments in advance, you can just indicate as such. Do you want to begin?
Yeah, so I only have one comment, so just the submission of the town of Coventry soil erosion sediment control application will be required for the project.
Thank you, Joe. Alex, I know you had planning comments you want to read with those words.
Yep. Yeah, the comment was that planning staff is aware that the applicant's proposal requires dimensional relief for encroaching into the required side setbacks. That degree of encroachment does fall within the 5% of the by right standard, and that means that the applicant can apply for relief under the new modification standards. And that's a new process that enables administrative review and approval without the associated mailing component that we're used to with the 25% administrative variance. So the administrative officer will evaluate that companion application for relief according to those new state law standards.
Thank you. And just for the record, the Reservoir Ave relief that they're seeking is they're required to have 30-foot side setback on either side of their building. They're actually only gonna be at about 28.5 feet. So they are looking to be 1.5 feet into their 30-foot side setback. If anybody around the table has concerns about that from their technical expertise, let us know. Otherwise, planning is going to review and provide analysis on that required relief on our end. For example, Chief, if you thought that constrained or pinched your ability to get around the buildings, we'd like to hear about it. Otherwise, if you don't have comments, no need to let us know. And then Ron, I know, Ron, you didn't get a chance to send an email, but I didn't know if you had comments on this one.
The setbacks was that you just answered, but they're on both sides of the building?
Yeah, it's the 28.6 right here. So you can see the dashed line.
So that building cannot be expanded.
They are encroaching into it within the 5.
But if they wanted to make the
range.
building bigger, so that's 7,500 square feet, that's why it's in front of you.
This one is, 2430 square feet. So the size of the building is well below the standard for the minor land development threshold.
Yep.
So, yeah, the only thing is really just that it would normally be by right a 30-foot setback. And so they're 1.4 feet into that. They could play up to within 1.5 to be able to qualify for that 5%.
So that was my only question, if there was, room for expansion.
Yeah,
Of
I
that.
guess they could expand, like theoretically, they could expand backwards within that envelope. But
Okay,
that's not the proposal that they're making, I guess.
The applicant initially came in seeking slightly more relief than that. I think they were looking for like 2 feet there and about on each side. We told them that if they shrunk down their ask to 1.5 feet, that they could be in that 5% range. And they said, yeah, they didn't have, like, I think they're getting the size of building that they wanted.
right,
And we told them if you're here, then it's a different process for you. And to keep in mind that when a minor application, such as this is called a minor land development, it's a commercial project, but it's less than our trigger for a major. When they need relief, if they needed to get full zoning relief, let's just say they're out of the 5%, they need to get full zoning relief. That brings the project up to the planning commission. State law does dictate that when they just want the 5% version, that can be provided administratively at the same time as the land development, the minor land development can also be provided administratively. So this project is still in due course. We do need to receive the full dimensional or the modification application from the applicant. But once we have that, if we have comments around the table and everyone is generally comfortable, staff feel like we'd be comfortable to make the decision on a modification and then move this along administratively.
yeah, I have no objections to these, especially the area it's in. I mean, I don't seem to be right to hold the guy up when it's pretty cut and dry. So whoever it is,
Great, so no comments. Russ, this one's not in your area.
Dimensional variance, I don't have a question. When we get further on, I'll have other questions
Of, on reservoir or other?
on reservoir. Yeah.
Oh, okay, actually, if you have questions or comments, we can take them whenever.
Yeah, on the existing plan, it shows in the front left-hand corner. I don't think it's there.
He's looking about the aerial, is that where you saw it, Kevin?
Yeah, right there, on the left-hand.
So give it a little bit of a lag, that's all.
Right there, all of those concrete tanks and storage containers and concrete block wall showing up on here, but I don't see them identified on other plans. And my question is there a R&D plan? Is there something that's gonna be incorporated? And I didn't see that.
Comment? And Kevin, we have no familiarity with what those tanks are being used for now.
I do not.
are they permanent fixtures or they just stored them?
know they're existing fixtures.
No.
They're structures attached to the ground on pads.
They should be, but.
You weren't lifting any up,
I
but
wasn't checking that.
I apologize for being late. Is that Niagara Pool?
Yes.
Would there be storage if would we be storing water on there at all?
it'll be that some.
I know he had the big poly tank next to that.
Probably carbon filters and stuff, maybe they filter the water, I don't know.
Yeah, but we'll get to the bottom. I mean,
I
at
just,
the
I
end of
just
the
don't
day-
see a remove and just, dispose of if it's not part of the
Yeah,
new plan.
yep. No, you're right. We need to know. If
Should
they're
be
staying, then they need to
Yeah.
be shown on the site plan.
There
If
should be
they're
a
not
demolition
staying,
plan, it's gonna be
Yeah.
removed,
we need evidence of what they're doing with that.
so.
Thank you, Kevin. Good comment. Alex, were you able to capture that one? Thank you. Chief?
No fire concerns, but it's not avenue, it's actually road.
Good to know.
Or having using permits.
Correct.
Nice.
That's where the mistake came from.
No, actually, it came from Mr. Beard himself.
Right.
Actually, I'll give Alex credit. He's got it right on the, he's got it right
No,
on the
I see
agenda.
that.
Mr. Beard has provided his site plan with a nice Cranston address for us.
That's it.
Great. So I think on this one, the only substantive comment is the one I'm hearing from Kevin. And I think that one has a pretty clear resolution that if we get a site plan that either adds those tanks or shows the demonstration that the tanks are gonna be removed, I feel pretty comfortable that staff could get that clarity and then, move it forward from there. Any other thoughts, comments, or discussions on this one?
Nope.
Nope. All right, well, we will produce a TRC report.
Just one other question. Are they gonna be hooking up to the sewer line that's existing?
Coming, yeah.
That
You know, offhand, Alan?
Yeah, I don't think they're proposing any water or sewer connection.
Proposing,
For child.
Port Johns.
Where's door four?
Porta johns.
Yeah.
Where's door four in the building? Do you know? Anybody know where door four is here?
No.
Oh, in this building?
Rescues coming here.
Oh,
For child?
Yeah.
Probably this doing school administration side. They have little classrooms in there.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be excused for a few.
Yeah, no problem.
yeah, you can.
Comes first.
Don't hold me to that.
So they're proposing porta johns.
Basically the same sort of treatment that they were doing for their.
On the last two
Yeah,
buildings?
75 airport.
Have they identified the location for their porta johns? on the plan?
Yeah, I don't recall that.
Do you have another agenda?
Yeah, you can have
my-
mine.
Oh, yeah. They got,
I got one right here.
Oh, okay.
this was the.
I'm on my
Thank you.
way out after this anyway.
Um,
The rest will come in fast.
Joe, you want to see.
Not
a
gonna
porta
do date
john.
sheet.
They're looking to make the porta john a permanent fixture on the site. You want to see it when it's like, it's up there. And then my only comment will be, maybe not right in front. Or, I don't think that they want to do that, but
Yeah, if we're closing a dumpster, then we might want to have a Port John, so.
put it behind the building is suitable. And then, I mean, actually, the bays. They got the parking behind, So Alex, if you'll make a note, we'll add this as a comment from planning. To add the location of the porta john on the plan, preferably towards the rear of the site.
And that's relatively close to the two buildings that have already been approved. So it should have porta johns.
The reservoir is
Down the street, so that's.
Okay.
Road.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Up more.
Right, so at the end, so this is on Reservoir. Okay, I just wanted to get my bearings on it.
Half a mile away.
Yeah, it's very close.
Where is Niagara going?
Uh-oh.
No, we're trying to pull up GIS. To have that extra aid. But go on.
I think that, I mean, honestly, does that, any other questions or comments on
No.
reservoir? All right, well, those are good comments. They'll be memorialized as part of our TRC report on the matter. Again, this one is going to be decided administratively by the planning department staff, and we will move it forward once we receive all of the sufficient information and application on the modification. What's the pleasure of the board in terms of the next two?
I'm gonna
see what the-
excuse myself.
Oh, yeah, Ron, thank you very much for coming.
The next two will come in
Yeah, yeah.
planning, so.
Yep, so Ron, let the record reflect Ron is not commenting on the next two applications because they're going to the planning commission. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
I know the chief just sent his comments. I want to see if he had more complex comments on one than the other.
Mhm.
So. Did he send those yesterday?
Have a good one, everybody.
You too, Ron. Thank you very much. Oh, you know what? Because you sent me an email to, yep. Top of the box. You don't have, from the,
No, my work email.
would you, Alex, can you do me a favor?
Mhm.
We haven't, let's see, I got it. Fire department's, comments on. Coventry self-storage where there was a note of concern. And why don't we do Mookow next? Because
Yeah.
Russ is here. Now in fairness to Russ, him and I just had a conversation about some of these items heading into the meeting. We talked specifically about the roadway. And that roadway, that access roadway is where DEM had initially given comments, and they prefer the access roadway to be where the applicant is showing it. But in fairness to you, Russ, you had just received some of this information in the background on that.
Right,
Now, for the record, this is, we'll call this matter, we are now looking at item 4.3 on the agenda, Mukau Solar. It's a solar installation at, 2446 Victory Highway. This is an item that is not gonna be going to our February Planning Commission meeting. They're looking to head to our March Planning Commission meeting. They still owe us some final information on their proposed variance. They are seeking a variance to site the panels into a side setback. But for the purposes of today, I know Joe has not had an opportunity to review all of the information that was received. Some of it was received just last week. So Joe's not prepared with his comments. I do think we anticipate that this will probably be on our next month's agenda for additional comments at our March TRC. That'd still be in time to capture it. But I think if anyone has comments, substantive comments that they feel comfortable putting on the record today, I'd rather get them now. One, it could save, for example, Russ, it could save you a trip of having to come back to TRC, but also it gives us
oh, and
time
I
to
so
react.
much like coming,
What's that?
and I so much like
I know
coming.
you do. But it also gives the applicant an opportunity, if there's a concern or a substantive comment and that perhaps we need it to be addressed, there's a chance that the applicant could address it. And then that way there's clarity before we head into the planning commission meeting. I know Russ, you just learned about it. Joe, you're not in a position, you want to wait on your comments for a little bit
Yeah,
longer.
I'd still like to discuss.
Sure.
The from it.
The applicant is here. Just so you guys are aware, we generally aren't gonna turn the TRC into a lot of dialogue or back and forth. Most of our TRC meetings are to like get the comments on the record on things that we already are comfortable with, but if there's questions for the applicant, they're here, they can answer them. And since we're not heading to a meeting of the planning commission next week, it's not as though we have to package this all together. Normally I want these meetings to be funnel points so that we're not opening up to new issues, that we're closing it down and we're commenting on the issues we're aware of. But we're not as time crunched on this one. So, you know, if we want to have a more open-ended conversation, we certainly can. Okay. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in if you feel like you've got comments.
Sure.
Kevin?
Pursuant to my February 7th comments to the planning, first item was the physical alteration permit is going to be required as Route 102 is a state-owned roadway.
Yep.
And I wanted to confirm the drainage calculations for the detention areas. Just several weeks ago, we found out the Cranston Solar Farm during the rain event that we had pummeled the roads all the way down into Coventry to Harris with flows and debris coming out from that solar farm. So I want to make sure that can contain the water on site and not have a chance of bringing it down onto the roadways and creating another hazard.
Okay. Okay, you wanted confirmation of the drainage calcs,
Correct.
and basically, Joe, I think that would end up being something that you would look at.
Yep.
And then just noting that you guys are aware you're gonna need a RIDOT physical alteration permit. Okay, great. This applicant, just to put this on the record, this applicant has
Was that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You all set?
Yeah, he felt banged his head, got a little bang on his head.
We're currently dealing with Mukau, which is actually out of your district.
Yep.
Russ, do you want to put any comments on the table on this one yet?
Looking at the plans, now that we can actually see them on paper as opposed to kind of a generic plans that we have with zoning, kind of gives you a little different aspect, but historically, a project of this size, I know that the last one that we did on 117 behind Monique's house.
Lewis one?
No, Monique
Oh.
Capwell
Okay, yep.
behind her house. That's a big, huge one that Green put up. The chief asked, and they were able to take care of this. We have accessibility all the way around it. Now that this is opened up, if you will.
Yep, please.
Accessibility, and we, believe it or not, if you remember, Chief, a few years ago, like down here, behind Jack and Jill's, we had like a 50-acre brush fire or whatever, which was, accessibility was really a problem. Well, that's one thing I know the chief likes to have. Like if you pull in that we could, if you do a 360-degree drive around, so we can access any part of the, any part of the property, any event, and you know, historically, right now, we don't have any intel as to solar panels becoming a fire hazard problem, but in the event that it does, we need to have accessibility to it. And right now, it appears that we can only basically get to the front gate, and that's pretty where we stop. So if we could either have like just make some kind of a gravel road that was, you know, would go all the way around it. And a site of this size, that we'd probably be looking for a cistern, at least 10,000 gallons, but we'd like a bigger, but
Okay. So the comment would be a desire for, would you be comfortable a crushed stone driveway? Gravel crushed stone
Mhm.
material? Right now, they're providing a 20-foot width driveway to enter the site. Is there a certain width that you would need to see or would like to see for a
well,
path
the thing
around?
is like when you, you know, if we go in there with vehicles, if we'd have to turn, we might have to turn around, or if they can provide a complete 360-degree circumference around the project, then that wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Fire trucks out there don't, you know, we carry the water in with us. It's not there's no hydrants out there, so that they're rather large trucks.
But 12 and 15 feet, be enough?
Probably so.
Okay.
So like,
Yeah, jump right in.
so, I'm not mistaken, TRC, the perimeter of where the panels are, you have the trees cut, but not, you don't actually have any, rubbing, so to say,
Correct.
that's all. So that's gonna help with water infiltration by keeping it like that. If we're going to cut a road in now, it's gonna reduce that infiltration. I thought that was kind of a good measure of what you guys are doing there. If we definitely need a road, I would say let's try to make it as less wide as possible. Just so we can have.
Well,
Did you get away with 10 feet?
no.
No, huh?
12 to 15.
Mhm.
Here's my question. What's the impervious capacity of a crushed stone driveway? Not
Well,
only impervious?
it's good as long as it's not driven on a lot. If it's-
Well,
I mean,
this is an emergency road. This isn't something like we're gonna come in and, you know, the point is accessibility.
I understand.
so if they provided, let's say, a 12 to 15 foot wide access road, and we'd obviously give this comment to the applicant and seek a design that showed what they could do. To get access either all the way around the site or the majority of the site with a turnaround area, if there's a pinch point. then-
We would probably be open to maybe a lane down the center of it, if that's possible, but as long as it went to the very end. It's about accessibility. It's,
Yeah, well, that's actually a key consideration. A center lane probably, may be seen as a preferable design option by the applicant. So if a center lane, and then I'd assume if you're doing a center lane, you're gonna want a hammerhead at the end of it.
we need something to turn around.
Yeah, so maybe if we bring it down here and then put the hammerhead over here, something like that,
There's probably gonna be some.
The weight of the vehicle is gonna be.
Well, that's
30
what
ton.
every day, yeah.
That's
Our
the
tankers
problem.
are, 30 tons
30
easy.
ton vehicle.
I mean, what kind of, does a crushed stone, I mean, the entryway into the site is a crushed stone driveway.
That should be, whatever material you use on the drive in. If it's gonna handle the big trucks that are bringing the stuff in there, it'll be able to handle our tankers.
Okay, so basically, if the crushed stone roadway in the middle, if that's suitable to fire, then that reduces the footprint of the design. It also reduces the amount of crushed stone we need to add. And if the crushed stone isn't frequently driven upon, then it's basically still considered impervious surface. Is that fair?
well, you probably wouldn't consider it 100%.
It would be pervious, not impervious. Right?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But so the idea is that, to avoid creating more impervious surface. keep it crushed stone. Obviously, if this is a roadway, we would maybe seek some sort of understanding that that roadway shouldn't be used for any applicant standard regular maintenance or routine, so that way we're not impacting it on a regular basis if it's just left for emergency.
Would that
Which
be-
I can't see the applicant needing to do a lot of maintenance out there in the first place.
You could put a breakaway gate for emergency vehicles so that nobody
Well-
else can drive on it.
Yeah.
We probably gonna request a Knox box at the gate, so we can access it in the event that we need to get in there, and that should take care of the problem.
So would you think you'd have to redo your storm water calculations to add that?
I think it depends on where we end up putting the panels that get replaced.
You basically have to shift plant panels around so that you can take one panel out of the middle. My suggestion would be, from fire's perspective, I'm assuming you're looking to get to the midpoint of it. So that if there's any given fire, you're as close as you can be, so you're probably looking for a roadway that would be, replace one of these two rows of panels with a roadway. Is that fair, Russ? So that you can get in the middle of the site, as close to all the panels as possible.
The sheer magnitude of the project, I mean, within reason, if we come into where it is proposed now, right down to come down to the corner.
Yep.
So from that corner to we'll say the wood line to the very south, if we're gonna call it, no, the other way, I'm sorry, drop straight down. What's the distance?
300-400 feet, maybe? Is that 100 feet?
I tried to use GIS, by the way, we have enough memory.
So probably, I mean, that steel bar is 100 feet.
And plus 200, so.
So you're probably talking about 3 to 4, maybe from there to get to the southern point of the site.
That would be we'd love to have a road all the way around it. That would be the most advantageous for the fire service. But, I understand financially that may be a burden, and so.
I mean, I'm not as worried about the financial burden. I'm thinking about the design of the site. One would be to try to limit the impact and the disturbance across the site. We've got an applicant, I think I think attempting to keep this as tight as they can. And it'd be, I think, advantageous if we add a roadway around the whole thing. I mean, essentially, we've got to bump that whole limit of disturbance out another however many feet. I think that's the bigger constraint, and I think that.
In the past, we've had the applicants have been able to put a road around it. That's the best advantage that we could possibly ask for.
But you may not have to displace it too much just by adjusting that stormwater basin to the north a little bit. You could actually put a perimeter road, a 12 to 15 foot perimeter road, all the way around that limited disturbance. And follow all the way around to the top.
Do you think you can get your truck, I mean, is that a fence? I assume that's around the whole,
It's a 7-foot fence.
so a
It's all
fence,
wetlands.
I imagine
So
the other
wetlands.
issue we've got here is probably turning movements and turning radius.
But
What's
he's
that,
he's
what's in
suggesting-
the view is all around here, all in this area, maybe even here, is just cut the trees and not grow them. So that keeps a nice
Okay.
natural surface for water to infiltrate, whereas. So you're not ripping it out, you're not compacting it, and you're not replanting seed. So it's a good environment that can capture water infiltration. If we put the road, then we're losing that.
Fair enough.
But, obviously, safety.
Well,
first, so-
and this is why we have a TRC, because essentially, I think the dialogue between engineering and fire is key. I think what we're seeing, what I'm hearing is that to add a roadway the way Russ might want is probably gonna impact stormwater in a negative way. And it may result in some need to widen the limit of disturbance. So Russ, I guess the main question comes down to you. In this circumstance, knowing that, would you be comfortable with them removing one of these rows of panels or creating a wide enough path between the middle of the rows of panels and seeing that with a hammerhead turnaround at the end?
That would be, the compromise to it. I mean, we're able to kind of make sure everything, it's about safety and that's
Yeah,
that's what we're looking at doing, so.
Fair enough. Yep. So I think-
Accessibility is what we're looking for, whatever way we can do that, the best way is, that would be great.
I appreciate that, Russ. So I think with that being said, I think we will end up having comments out of this meeting because I think what we're getting is comments that are gonna result in a revision from the applicant. I don't think there's any doubt that we're gonna bring Mookow back. One is Joe had comments that he wanted to weigh in on the concepts of the fact that we don't have a state permit and comments that would be privy to our comfort level with that. But the comment that you're leveraging, I think, is actually key to put on the record now, and it's gonna give the applicant direction to come back with a revised design.
At the zoning board meeting, we had a couple of abutters that were in West Greenwich, but because we're like
Yeah,
right on the
I
line.
recall that meeting.
There was like next to, except for these two people, and one person was like. I knew exactly where they live on Shop Street, and I was like, wow, but based on. What you were talking about, what you were talking about from Cranston, I didn't realize that it made it all the way to Harris. Wow.
We had 4 foot of water down by the Harris Grill. We could follow those stones coming from the solar plant farm all the way down.
So these people were adamant about runoff. They were also adamant about if you remember, their wells and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of false news out there that, all the chemicals and whatnot that are in these solar panels. And I'm like, where are you getting this stuff from? Granted, we don't have there's not a lot of information available as to what happens after 20 years. Well, where is this stuff gonna go? If it catches fire, how, what's it gonna create in the ground? Because it just doesn't happen that often, so it's. I don't wanna jinx this by saying it, but I mean, it's right now, it's a pretty user-friendly project.
Mhm.
And it's falling in line with the green energy concept that we're gonna be mandated shortly, but that's why we're doing as much as we can where we can.
That makes sense. So, Russ, do you think it's fair for the TRC purposes to define your comment as you want increased fire accessibility? And you would be comfortable, your preference is to get a road around the whole thing,
Mhm.
but you would be comfortable with a singular road down roughly the middle of the
Mhm.
proposed array with a hammerhead turnaround at the easterly
Eastern
end.
end, yep.
Okay. Kevin, did you have comments on this one yet? Did you email anything to us on this one yet?
Yeah, I said it when we started.
Oh, okay, I'm
That
sorry.
was that was from my meeting.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
And-
You
And the
did give
PAP,
comments.
yes.
Before we move,
I'm
and then
paying attention.
Sorry, yeah.
At least-
I'll try, I'll keep trying.
at least a 10,000 gallon cistern, probably, well, wherever the department wants it, but probably would put it out towards the street.
And then you'd be looking for an easement on that as well? So a 10,000 gallon cistern near the street with a easement on that part of the private.
So
property.
wherever it goes in, a fire truck can pull up to it without blocking access into the project.
I don't think that's gonna be a challenge.
And even if it's on, it faces 102. 102 is a relatively large road, so we don't, accessibility, like we were talking about the one last month. Putting it out on 117, it's tight on a good day, but we can also put it in the ground, but we can put the pipes facing anywhere we want. So on that particular one, we'll have accessibility. So you'd be driving, not this one, the one on 117.
Gotcha.
Um,
Might go with the overall site plan. No. Yeah, I just wanna see the access area. Are we pretty comfortable if that cistern is located inward on the site, out of the front yard setback? I'm actually, even though it is a utility, structures and front setbacks can still trigger variances.
okay,
Um,
you won't see it. There'll be 3 pipes coming out of the ground.
it'd be largely an underground system.
Yeah, it has to be
Okay,
an underground.
okay, has to
We
be
don't want it to
underground. Then
freeze.
I'm not as worried about that, but the pipes coming out of the ground, I don't know if I'm gonna qualify as a structure. If this was an above ground structure, I think we have to be a little thoughtful.
Nope,
Do you care in any particular location on the site?
we would, what we're doing here is providing water in the event of an emergency. By leaving it out near the street, we don't, in the event of an emergency, we don't clog everything inside of the project, but also the tank is available for anything that happens out on 102, so it's kind of,
You prefer it to be as close to the entry point as
Correct.
possible, as reasonably possible on the private property. Okay. So I think we've captured that comment. Joe, I know you're gonna have some comments on this at a later date. Do you have anything else that you wanted to put on? Or just, we have the applicant here to put
Yeah,
on
so
notice?
you could just give us an update on your freshwater wetlands application.
Well. Knowing we may have to change the layout, that might change some things, and if that changes the design, I want to make sure that the design that we submit to the state is solid. And it sounds like some of it may require us. I mean, the entire solar array is being constrained by wetlands right now. We don't touch them. We don't touch buffer area, and we touch jurisdictional area a little bit. But if that changes, that could make it more of a significant impact and tougher to permit. It's not impossible, but it does change things a little bit. So we were about to submit. So
Well,
I'm
the
gonna-
good news is that you haven't submitted yet.
right.
I do want to see the fire comment addressed. Obviously, you guys can, try to see how tight you can get it.
Mhm.
I'm hearing 12 to 15 foot wide roadway. I'm also assuming they don't want to have a 15 wide open gap between panels. They're gonna want a little more space
Right.
between the panels so that their vehicles can maneuver pretty safely.
Makes sense.
So a little bit of buffer around that. I'll let you guys do the design and then come back with what you see. But I can understand how you don't want to lose panels, and if you gotta shift them around, you gotta shift them around.
Right.
I think the only place to shift them is into the setback further, where the variance is requested.
I mean, I'll put it to you this way, I can't quite claim that the need for fire access is justification for more relief. You have to make the best case you can for relief. So if the idea is that you want to keep the same number of panels, we need fire. The options are to remove the panels to provide fire access, or to keep the panels and push them into the setback.
Yeah.
You can certainly make your best case for the relief.
Yeah.
I think your best case for relief is the fact that we don't have a lot happening on the other side of that property line right now.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm
We're
also
getting
curious,
started
does the wetland complex, does that work up on the property to the north, or is it fairly high and dry up there?
So the wetlands do go onto the property to the north, but not in that area. So we wouldn't be impacting jurisdictional area buffers or any wetlands. Back the other way.
So
Yeah,
basically, I mean,
so we wouldn't be impacting anything up there.
Yep.
If we were to move the panels north. I don't, especially after the comment made earlier, I don't want to mess with the stormwater drainage and the stormwater management system.
Yep.
Because
Understood.
I believe at this point, we not only meet but exceed the state standards for water quality, water quantity, and recharge. So there is, from my understanding, a little bit of wiggle room, but again, based on that comment, I really don't want
Yeah, I
to
would rather
attempt to, I don't want to
Not
push the envelope on
that, yeah.
just making it. No.
Yeah, so understood. I mean, you guys can like put together a design. At the end of the day, your relief is gonna be granted by the planning commission. This is a unified development review. Just keeping in mind, the planning commission, I think, is just gonna wanna hear your best argument.
Mhm.
I think that's up to you guys to present it. My general advice would be, I don't want you to get that much closer into your side setback. And it looks like you might have, ideally, you're kind of constrained by the wetland on all edges except to the north. So, it's up to you guys to put your best design foot forward. It's a 40-foot required minimum vegetative buffer. Is that per code? Have you maintained that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And
So
we're
really,
gonna-
it's the side setback for building construction.
Right.
I mean, one avenue you could take is if, you know, you can't meet the 100 feet, but you're giving us less than that, and perhaps you're giving us less than that in more areas. You could always perhaps suggest to add to or enhance the vegetative buffer to some degree. And I'd be curious, you know, what's out there in the vegetative buffer too. I think one of the issues that, to me, the setback, a side setback here would be visual impact to future development of the property to the north.
We're gonna show you all that.
Cool.
We already have a visual.
Oh, you guys?
We already have it. So you're gonna see that there's nothing to see. From the property line.
Is there good, dense, vegetation in that 40-foot buffer right now?
Yes, but
Mhm.
they're also gonna supplement it in areas.
Great.
That
Oh,
need it.
you've got a
That need it.
landscape plan.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, we haven't seen that yet.
Have you guys seen?
That looks.
I thought that was, I thought that was.
I don't know if it's uploaded.
You should have that.
Yeah.
If you
thought
don't,
so. If not,
Are they
Yeah,
part of
okay.
this plan set?
I thought so, yeah.
but we're gonna have an actual view shed.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we do have some landscape sheets. But the view shed analysis is that meant to be like one of those 3D aerial things?
No,
On the ground view shed
that,
analysis?
that is done with a computer simulation first, and then we do an on the ground photo simulation as well.
Okay. Well,
Well, at this point, we're
It's-
just doing
it's
the
GIS
view
based,
shed.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
from the property line. Yes,
got it. Fair enough.
And actually.
I mean, and that's the real issue at play here.
2 miles.
We go to 2 miles. Can't see it from 2 miles.
Because the setback, Doug, is really just where the building or a structure.
It's a
has to be.
structural.
So it
setback.
could be clear cut right up to the 40-foot buffer,
Understood.
so.
I mean, just keep in mind that with the planning commission providing your relief, I think they're just gonna wanna see you guys do your best to
Right.
address. Cause I think that's clearly what's at hand here.
Yes.
It's, you're in the side setback.
Mhm.
It's the type of development and the fact that just north of this property line could be developed. I think we're talking about a visual impact.
It couldn't be, that's the other part
That's,
of it.
that's even more
They're gonna
constrained.
testify that it can't be developed over there, so they're not.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
So on
what is
top
the,
of
what
the
is the
view-
constraint to the
So
development?
there are natural heritage areas, and there are wetlands up there, not near this area, but for them to get into the site,
They can't access
they
this
would-
area?
not easily. A lot more
Well, I mean, those
Yeah.
pieces of justification are very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
which I
Mhm.
think is in our narrative that we sent to you.
Yep.
So you got some of it.
We got some of it. So, all right, well, this is all very helpful. I mean, we really have a couple issues. One of them is the state permit issue, the other is the variance issue, and then clearly you guys have a design to come back with in terms of consideration of where you wanna, how you wanna come back with. An array that has, the access for fire as discussed here.
With regard to the state permit, Doug, the new state law does require us to have the approval. I mean, the approval of DEM before the planning commission approves.
Fine,
So we don't have to submit it with the application as we used to have to.
Yep.
But we do have to submit it prior to approval, unless the planning commission makes it like a, an approval with a condition that it has to be submitted.
I think that's what we would be considering.
Yeah,
We're considering whether we would give you preliminary plan approval conditional upon
Yeah.
receiving state permits prior to final plan approval.
Yeah.
And that's, we understand that we have that ability, but not necessarily have to mandate.
Right.
And that's the real question.
Yep. okay,
And if I may be just a little bit more clear about the status of what we're submitting. After the pre-application meeting with the state, they suggested applying for an application for significant alteration, which is a more rigorous review process.
Yep.
With the possibility of downgrading it to a standard freshwater wetlands permit with a variance, which wouldn't be as long or onerous as a review period. So we're taking that into consideration, making our design the minimal impact as possible, where I think it would still be, we think it would still be freshwater wetlands with variance. But if we went that way and we had to alter the design to the point where it was a significant alteration, we get a kickback and we have to start from scratch. So in this case, we're working with the design, we're gonna take all these comments into consideration, apply for significant alteration, and hope it still gets downgraded. Yeah, and so that's kind of why I want to try and.
What was your biggest ask in the permit? Is it the access road? Is it that? culvert?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was about the closest where we've since. I'm trying to think of the point at which we started doing this. I think it was November, December, we started moving that road around so that it initially had been cutting across those wetland areas, and since weaved it around, we've also modified some of the utility lines that were in the wetland area and have since been moved out of that. So I think the amount of wetlands that we hit are almost nothing.
Gotcha. I mean, our biggest issue would be not wanting to have you guys go through a process with DEM that kicks out a very different looking design.
Right.
And then we have to consider bringing you back in front of the
Right.
planning commission for final.
Exactly.
The idea would be, we're trying to save time and we're trying to keep the process appropriately scaled.
Yep.
In my opinion, I do understand that the access road, if you get that doesn't push around your site design for the physical improvements nearly as much, that the access road is what it is. I think if they ended up coming back and saying, we're not gonna grant you a permit at that site, we certainly have a very different looking application at that point. You're probably talking about some unique strategy to come in through access easements through other properties.
Mm.
If you even still have a project that you can move through.
Mm.
I mean, that would be a very different looking project. So I think we're working under the assumption that since DEM has guided you.
Yeah.
To seek access through this specific point, and they've acknowledged that that's the meatiest part of your permit. We're considering whether it makes sense for us to, bring you to the preliminary plan at the planning commission with that as a recommended condition of approval. So if that all makes sense?
Mhm.
I think that there's wiggle room there, but we definitely want to have our heads wrapped around the different aspects of, we don't want to be spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
Reviewing something that we think is going to get kicked back with a very different look. That
Right,
makes sense. Joe, any other thoughts? Because I mean, a lot of this, I know you're still digesting the materials that just came. Any other questions that we could get behind?
No, that was good.
Excuse me,
Other,
I have
Yeah,
one
yeah.
question. In seeing the larger plan, what type of gravel access or access do you have to the cemeteries? Because I'm in charge of maintenance of cemeteries and you need to get somebody up there in the event that they get perpetual care. I know it shows 5 foot, but it doesn't say what it is.
Yeah, I think it's remaining the same. I can double check on it, but I don't think we're,
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean,
don't know.
what's there now? Is it?
I don't know, that's what,
Oh, I thought
I
you
didn't see that
said
plan, what was there,
maintenance then.
what was proposed, so it's frozen.
you just want to hear details on
Just
the
what it
access.
is.
And are you looking for an easement on that as well?
No, it's already existing, so it's, again, it looks like it's gonna be adequate to get a 5 foot pass is
Frozen.
fine.
Well, that's, I was curious if, what's currently used to access it and maintenance it, because if that's the case, then we can, we don't want to make it less for
Yeah,
sure.
no. Whatever's there and long as it's maintained, yeah,
It's the
All right,
internet
so
line
whatever's
that's
there, you
showing us
want
on.
it just maintained.
I don't know.
correct.
It was just, well,
All right, any other thoughts or questions or comments on Moo Cow Solar? We've got good comments from Fire. Thank you very much, Russ. I think that's very valuable. I'm glad we're getting that. Honestly,
Mhm.
if we were getting those comments and this was headed to planning commission next week, that would probably be very challenging for this to stay on target. So in a way, I'm glad that we're getting all these comments now. So thank you for that. Nothing else, then we'll move on to the last agenda item. And Russ, you're good. That was your only one for today. Feel free to stick around if you want. And do you guys have any other questions?
thank
Sorry.
you.
That was
Yep,
good.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
And so the next agenda item will be item 4.1 on our agenda, Coventry self-storage. This is for comments to the planning commission. This is for a self-storage facility at 1920 Nooseneck Hill Road.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Planning staff had a number of comments on this, and I'll note, this one also had a late arriving variance one that they had not given us an application for. I would dare say this variance, I think, is fairly minor in nature. It's a self-storage building that per code would need to give us 7 or 8 loading spaces. I think we all understand a self-storage unit is not gonna have that great of a need for loading spaces. That was probably anticipated for, if it was a grocery store of that size, maybe we're talking about that kind of need. They are gonna provide 1 loading space, but they do need a dimensional variance from the code. I think it slipped through the cracks on their end that they needed to give us that as a separate application. They did not. That's the reason why this one is not ready to be heard by the planning commission next week. But there were a number of technical issues that we've identified with the plan, and I know both Alex and I have been in direct contact with the applicant. Maybe, Alex, it makes sense for you to kick off because you've got comments. And use this meeting as just, you've got the comments in writing. You
Yeah.
can quickly summarize the ones that are worth bringing up, but then you had contact last with Caroline
Yeah.
on where she's headed.
Yeah, let me just run through first, I guess, the bulleted list here. Doug has mentioned that the dimensional variance is a piece that needs to be submitted, but they also are going to be seeking a waiver from Joe, our engineer, for relief from providing the minimum number of off-street parking spaces. That is actually, that part is a waiver, but again, it's a similar logic that self-storage is a relatively low traffic use, so it's, they don't have the same needs in terms of parking as you might expect from another use in that zone that would be of a building of that size. Otherwise, as I brought up in a notice of deficiency that was dated November 29th of last year, we're going to need clarity as to whether the applicant intends to proceed with a sewer connection for the site or an OWTS. And I had spoken with Caroline, who's the representative from Kimley-Horn, who's kind of managing the project. And she said that they still haven't made up their minds yet, but they're thinking in the direction of sewer. And they're gonna ask a few questions and try to look more into that, I guess. That's their most recent thinking. They do need to provide us a more updated water letter. There was one that was provided as an attachment there at the link that I gave you guys, but it was from just about 1 year ago. And from the way that it was written, it looked like they hadn't come up with this current site plan at that time, so they need, Kent County has to be able to review the plan as it is to be able to say whether it's designed adequately for what they need. In terms of site plan details, and I'm sorry I can't pull it up, but I think the computer here is, it's about had its fill of us. There were basically the locations of the trash collection and snow storage areas, in particular trash collections right up front. Not really an ideal location. It's not clear to me that oh yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Joe, or cutting you out.
Yeah, it's not clear to me that if they even have enough space to screen it in. As the code would require.
I'm going to show it there. Is there another plan to show the trials?
Yeah. Sure with that.
Here somewhere?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, you're right. That's the
Yes.
comment. They just put a comment, but they didn't.
yeah, so it's. Again, it's right up by the access road in, so that's basically the first thing you see as you enter.
Yeah, they notched out the fence over here for it, but that was it.
But it's not, yeah, and it's not a full enclosure from the look of
Right.
it either. The snow collection area is like right up over here against the building next to parking spots, again, right up at the front. Just so that had been a comment to look into whether those could be relocated maybe to the rear. And that had been raised in the past as well. Other small things, just that we didn't see any indication of soil or groundwater test holes in this set. And that had been, those details had been required at this stage, so we're just gonna make sure that those are included. And the only other thing that I had noted in my list was that in their checklist, they had seemed to indicate that the property was subject to deed restrictions, but they never provided any documentation of that, so I don't. Just need to make sure that they didn't, in error, put an X, which means like a check mark instead of thinking X means no, you know, something could be that simple, but we don't have that clarity right now.
Thank you, Alex. Let's go around the tables. I mean, Alex put a few things on the table that might get reactions from others here. But why don't we go around the table again? If you've given us comments in writing, just note it. But if you want to add to it based on what you just heard, we can. This is not going to planning commission next week, so this may be a case where it comes back to us, but honestly, if some of the changes are so straightforward, we could keep it off our agenda and just get it ready for planning commission based on what we hear from you today.
I'll go first.
Yeah, please.
I know Joe made a comment about it, but the Kent County Water, this is a 3-story building. It's gonna be required to be sprinkled. There is a big problem with water pressure out in that street. There was a plan that I had saw for Woodland 3 where they were gonna take a main and tie it into Magnolia Lane to boost the pressure for Woodland Manor 3. But in this area, the water is very, very poor, and I don't know if they could meet the fire flow requirements with what's out there right now without the possibility of where that Woodland Manor 3 project stands or whatever. But the water from Reservoir Road up over the hill to Hockney Hill Road is just very, very poor. There's buildings over there. Eminent Torgy Law Office is on a well because Kent County Water wouldn't give them water. M&M's building a well. This is in that same area, so I don't know if that's my biggest concern. The rest of the project's fine, but the water supply and what they can put over there is
And
huge.
That building is gonna be full of stored material.
Correct.
It's
I'm gonna need
a
the
lot of,
sprinklers.
a lot of
Oh, we'll
fuel
be
for a
sprinkled.
fire.
Yeah,
Oh, it will be
Yeah.
sprinklers.
no, yeah, I mean,
This
yeah,
is right across
and
the
you don't
street
know
from
what people
Coventry
really
Crossing.
put in them
So
either.
How are they providing water to Coventry Crossing? It's right on either side of the street.
Well, they'll probably get it through what it states, but it's water is water, and like you said, the topography, they're trying to correct what's happened in the past, and where I work,
Yeah, another one.
if I've got the sink on and they flush the toilet, one of the toilets in there, the water stops. I mean, it's nasty, but so there might be, I don't know what the main is in the street. There might be some volume. Maybe they'll have to
But
put
there's
a
a
fire pump.
plan to connect it to, I mean, that Woodland 3 project. Have you seen that here? Is that something that?
No,
So we
Woodland
saw,
Manor 3 is a phase that we have not heard a whisper of.
We've
There's a chance
seen
that
some
dies on the vine.
So, yeah, it came to light a little while ago and then it died.
okay,
So.
because that seemed like that was gonna cure a lot of things in that area that connect over to Magnolia Lane, from what we saw. Because even when you get down in there further, Vero Lane and stuff, the water pressure is horrible. It's always on our mind, fire department wise, because of what's down there. So that's a huge concern with this. I don't, right now, they would never be able to meet the fire flow requirements. No way.
Does Kent County Water Authority, when they provide review and approvals, do they give you pressure? Or do they
Yes.
only discuss volume?
They both.
And then is it known, so we know that the Kent County Water Authority letter on this is stale at this point. I think Alex, your comment was it's a year old.
It's a year old and they said at the time that for whatever was designed at the time, I think it was before this plan set, that it wasn't going to be adequate for what they needed. Or that it wasn't up to their standards, so they basically said you're gonna need to redesign. So it's, again, I don't think that they were looking at this plan set from the way they were speaking about it. So there's gonna need to be a revised or renewed letter anyway. They need to take a look at it.
Is there any mechanism that someone has to increase pressure on their own private property, like a private pump that increases the pressure that they need? So basically, this could be headed to a condition of approval where they need to give us that kind of piece of equipment.
They may need a well.
But you also need
To
the
the well.
volume,
No, you need
not just,
volume.
you're not just the pressure, you need
Yeah.
the quantity. of
Yeah, and
fluid.
most durations is over 2 hours, so.
Yeah, so there's certain requirements, like they have to provide a certain amount of volume for a certain period of time. And that might be a huge issue, and it might be real expensive too.
Yep. Does anybody at this table feel comfortable with any form of the planning commission considering preliminary plan approval and conditioning these items off? Or would you say we need to get to the bottom of water volume and water pressure at the table now?
the latter.
Okay. I mean, those are valuable comments. Because at the end of the day, if they have a process in front of them to consider a complex situation where Kent County Water isn't giving them exactly what they want and they need to come up with a well and or some sort of private installation to increase pressure, then the idea is we're gonna say we want that on the plan heading into the preliminary plans meeting by the planning commission.
In the past, they've, like across the street here, I don't even know what the name of the company is anymore, but the very end of Industrial Drive on the right-hand side.
Seaside.
Oh, Seaside Casual, is that?
Yeah.
When that was Outlet Warehouse. There was a low bays and there was the high bays. They changed insurance companies and Factory Mutual said, we're not gonna insure this until you put a fire pump there. They did this, they didn't have any interaction with us, but when they did their testing at the time, it's when the fire pump was shut off on Naughty Oak Road, so they had volume, they had no pressure. And they put I think it's a 750 gallon per minute pump, because now the high bay is full of material and it's got rack storage. I mean, it rack sprinklers and they've come a long way, but fire pumps are great and they might be an alternative, but the chief has already told you, you still gotta have the volume in the street. And right now, I don't know what the volume is going down Nooseneck Hill Road.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and they should provide engineering plans showing exactly what the fire flow requirements are. We don't do that at the fire department. I mean, they gotta
Kent
show.
County Water could give you that in about 30 minutes.
Yep. When it's the applicant's responsibility to petition Kent
Correct.
County Water
Sure.
to get that information. As we went through this, knowing that the water letter was stale, that was why planning called that out as a concern on our end.
Yeah,
We'd want to
gotcha.
see something up, but it's good for us to get the feedback from this group. That's not an item that you would feel comfortable giving any sort of positive commentary on as it heads to the planning commission until it's resolved and you've got eyes on it.
Do you have a storm drainage plan before this? Is there an earlier? Show the tree elevations.
Yeah, it's. Talking about for the basin.
Everything around it.
C5?
My concerns that I have put in writing is that all this impervious area comes down to this, which is only got 5 foot deep, that is lowest. That water's coming in, all the roof drains are coming in, and this is swale to come in here. There is no overflow for large events like we just had. There should be a outlet control structure where some way of getting the water to come this way away from Nooseneck Hill Road.
Yeah, so I looked into that because I saw your comment. So the road, the edge of the road is at 256. So it appears that there's 2 feet of freeboard in this basin at the 100-year storm, according to their calculations. So if this was to spill over, the water is going to go this way. It's going to back up this way before it goes this way, because this drops off considerably over here, down here. So the water, it would have to be a lot of water to go into the road.
But here's my question. They're indicating that this swale moves this way.
It does. No,
So-
I'm saying if the water if it ever reached capacity in the basin
Yeah.
and then it started to spill backwards, it would spill backwards before it spilled forward,
Makes sense.
because the elevation, the edge of the road elevation is higher than it is back here. So this is 256. It's still 254 back here.
Is it fairly flat through here? It's just that there's a lip here, so it's like it fills in, but it doesn't necessarily run that way. It just can't run that way.
That's right.
So it's fairly flat.
Right, so if you got your basin like this.
Yep.
Now it starts to fill up, so it's gonna spill backwards this way.
Yeah. But that even though I appreciate the point, which is like, listen, we're protecting our roadways interests. I mean, would you tend to agree we need an overflow that also directs us away from the building?
Well, you can't go away from the building because the elevation's higher over here.
No, I mean,
So
that's like in
the
terms of,
yeah, the elevation, it'll spill that way anyway.
Remember something right now,
This area is nothing planned for it, so why can't we have small dosing basin that's gonna go there with an outlet control structure, so the water's gonna go someplace. Again,
Remember, on a good day right now, during rain, or even when snow starts to melt, I see it all the time because I travel that road all the time going back to the shop. The water comes down Nooseneck Hill Road, and then it gets right about in front of that building, makes a left hand or right hand, depending on which way. But the water that's coming down Nooseneck Hill Road goes down into the low lying area.
Into this
with-
property?
Where that building's being built.
Yeah, so this
But the
basically,
catch, it's a catch basin without being a basin.
so basically, which is why we need to handle stormwater very carefully. But is there a place for this to be, for any overflow to go? I mean, that's the question.
No, other than back this way, no, it can't go forward. It's gonna go back. That I looked at the stormwater report, it's purposely designed without a spillway or an OCS, so.
Okay.
That's their design. You know,
I made my notes.
according,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
no, according to them, they're gonna say it's done within the state guidelines.
And,
Stormwater
but,
design
and,
manual.
and your review would suggest if they're saying that and their calcs show it and they've got a stamped engineer,
And
then,
they have 2
then they
feet of
did
free
what they
water
needed
at
to.
100-year.
I mean, it's their own building that they're putting into risk. And if they've met state requirements, then they've met state requirements. I know what your point is, Kevin, which is let's be careful. Because I mean, here we all are. We've seen state requirements.
100-year storms are not.
Are
the
not-
norm.
Yeah. Well, we
They're
get
going
one
above.
every couple of years. You know, a 10-year storm is like, oh, you know, we got like how many?
Is the new 10-year.
Yeah, we'll get. I think the new 10-year storm means we get 10 a year,
Yeah.
not one comes every 10 years.
Just, I know,
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, but I agree. If there's not a logistically good place to put that water, then they understand that they're building into a bathtub and they have to live with that. And as long as it's not putting public infrastructure or public property at greater risk. I guess one other question is, could this put abutting properties at increased risk? What's this?
Coventry lumber.
Ioannidis.
Ioannidis.
funeral home.
Is there anything that needs to be done in your opinion?
Well,
to-
so-
To maybe go above and beyond
You know,
state
the-
law to give some sort of protection to that? Is that where the water, so the water
So-
comes down the road and sits here?
Blue line here. This is where the water would flood around this whole blue line before it went to yellow.
The water goes out that way?
No, so the water, if the water was to fill,
Yeah.
if we got a Noah's Ark storm and the water came up high enough,
Next week.
yep, it would stay within the blue before it got high enough to go to yellow. Once it went to yellow and higher, then it would spill into the neighbor.
My question is that blue doesn't have an endpoint. So my thought is like blue suggests if it just keeps filling up, where's the endpoint this direction? Does the water just keep running there?
Irrigation for the neighbor.
Here's my thought is that we have to meet at the minimum state guidelines on stormwater. It's hard for us to mandate a significant change that goes above and beyond state, but we're playing in territory here where I think if there's a solution that we could advise, if there's an opportunity to push them, especially, you know, in my mind, it's to protect one, public infrastructure, public property, then it's to protect your neighbors. If they want to build inside of their own bathtub, that's fine, but you know, if the water naturally wants to gather here, and then they're gonna build a big building and they're gonna start pushing the water around, I am a little nervous about what happens on either side of them now.
Well, you got the storage behind it, and then behind that, you got the trailer park.
Yeah,
Back here.
Mhm.
I mean, this seems to be the
That's the one.
puddle.
Well,
But this yellow line doesn't really end either. This
Well,
yellow
the-
line kind of tailors off here. So I'm wondering, does
So
it
according-
fill in the back of their property first?
No, so according to their design, it should never leave the basin. That's
Yeah.
according to their design.
Yeah, 100-year storm.
2 feet below the top of the basin.
We're recording this, right? We're gonna have this on record. So never gonna leave the property.
Joe said.
According to their
But I
design,
know Kevin's first concern was the street. So a lot's gonna happen back here before it gets to the street. That's all I'm saying.
yeah, understood. And so I guess as we look at this, you know, I'll ask Joe if, you know, if you think that there's a reasonable protection or accommodation, whether it be, you know what, we're gonna ask you guys to build a berm here. I don't know what it might look like, and you would know a lot better than anyone else here. I do think we're entering into territory where if we've got a known drainage issue on a piece of property, which this property is accepting drainage from the public roadway in front of it. So, you know, they're the
Well,
bathtub.
we can make, make a comment that they need to ensure that they're not collecting any drainage from the roadway.
My concern, is I don't want another Mr. Lindley. You knew that there's a problem and you allowed it to happen now.
Right.
Now my unit got flooded, so town's gonna pay for it.
Yep.
That's all.
So,
What's
long
how
as
would
they-
how would
long as they
we
can-
how would we create any opportunity to not? I mean, here's the thing: is the water on the roadway wants to run in here probably just because that's where the curb cut is right now, right? That's the first opportunity it has to dive off of the. Oh, there's no curbs.
No. Is there-
But is it just
big
the
drainage right there?
is it the
Is there any
pitch of
drainage? No, there isn't.
the side of the
No.
road is why it's
No.
still gathering on the road there?
There's nothing really directed away from, like, that's the low point. It comes down and it kind of makes if you're heading towards West Greenwich, kind of makes a left-hand turn and goes down into.
So there's no curbing that's funneling it in here. It's just that the road that just, it happens to be lower than the abutting
Sheet flow.
properties. The sheet flow just wants to find its way here.
and we want the basin just collecting site runoff. We don't want it collecting street runoff too.
Yeah.
Because,
I might change the calculations.
Yeah, a little bit. so, we could definitely
I'll
ask for that.
we'll work with you, Joe, on this. So one of my questions as we wrap up our conversation would be, do we need to bring this back in front of us? Now, the real question is if they're not giving us a heavy-handed design change, then I don't think we need to see something, but we can work with you, Joe, to make sure that we get comments on that protect our interests and protect perhaps the private properties on either side of this. Whether that's comments that say we'd like to see a berm, or whether it's comments like we'd like to for you to design this, giving us full knowledge that you've accepted the stormwater. Now, from my understanding, they have to design for the water that enters the site today. So all of the water that's sheet flowing here has to be incorporated in their design. If we feel like we're pretty comfortable that they've demonstrated that in their application, great. If we feel like it's a little loose, I tend to agree, which is that there's only so far you can push an applicant when we're going above and beyond state law. But if we have a known problem here, then we want to provide some level of protection. And even if it looks like, we push them for a berm or some low cost technique, but if it looks like putting a condition of approval to say, I need you to be, further protect against these issues to the greatest degree possible, knowing that the issue's on the ground.
No, just crap.
Oh,
This,
right over there.
this area here, limited disturbance,
Yep.
there's nothing going on and there's nothing there, so.
Why
then
not
to
widen the
east,
basin?
Then just to extend the basin down, add more capacity.
Did you catch that one, Joe?
I did. I thought of that. We can ask for it, but I can picture them saying pound sand. It's big enough already. And they have the right to do that.
They do,
but
and that's the thing is,
we
but at
could
the end
ask
of the
them.
day, you know what this is going to? It's going to our planning commission. You know what they're also asking for? Relief from our code in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so it could be a good.
This could, and not to say, I'll just put it to you this way. If this applicant is showing a willingness to work with us, then I'd love to see that approach. And I think that this is a good project, but if this is the biggest area of concern, then I want to make sure we get it right. And yeah, you're right. I mean, there are issues on this plan where they're counting on relief. They're counting on a favorable review, discretionary level of review. I think when you look at a project like this, you look at it holistically. What's the big impact you're giving us? And then what kind of relief are you asking?
Right.
So, I mean, that's my take.
Give us some reassurance with
yeah,
the drainage.
And I'm curious, how well do they document the water they're accepting from the public roadway? If that seems a little gray, you can say, listen,
Maybe that top elevation needs, that part of the detention basin needs to be raised, so it keeps that water on.
Yeah.
tight cavity.
Yeah.
So it gives you more capacity. in the
Can I,
pond
can I
also.
ask a question? You guys are the experts on this whole thing. I mean, we're the fire dudes, but if we stop the water that's normally going in there, where's that water gonna go?
gonna keep on traveling. I would assume that this is where it's going downstream,
Well,
258.
so we're gonna-
No, actually 256.
Can do the lowest elevation.
It looks
no, I
like,
got that. I
it
got
looks
that.
like it wants
No,
to
I
keep going
understand
that
that.
way then.
Not only shit flows downhill, but, so now we're gonna dump a lot of water into that major intersection. I'm just saying, not that it's, well, right now, it's got a place to go and so if they don't come up with a plan on what you're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ways we can push and pull, and I agree with you.
No, that's.
I mean, one thing we can't do is, well, I'll put it to you this way, they need to design. Understanding that the water that they accept today, they need to plan for. This turns into a complex situation where, you know, how have they accurately documented what water they're accepting today? Even though that water's coming from a town road, they still have to plan
State
for and
road.
accept it. Oh, I'm sorry, state road. Yeah, we'll push it off on them.
That's right.
Now, let the deal.
Um,
Let them deal with it. Let them put a drainage
but-
system in.
We'll keep going around the table, but by the end of the conversation, I want to know, you know, whether we have enough comfort for this to move forward with what we have in hand, or if anyone would want to see this back on the table again.
Water, fire flow,
Fire flow.
absolutely.
So for you, it's pressure, it's volume and Kent County Water gives you the initial starting point to say what Kent County Water
What they can
allows us to
provide.
then
And
go
is
from
that
there.
adequate
uh
for a 3-story storage facility?
if they provided that. Is that something that you would want to see again in the TRC? Or would you be comfortable if they provided that, you reviewed,
That the fire marshal would review it.
that your fire marshal will review? Some of these things, you know, like if it's highly technical. For me, TRC serves a role in that when we bounce ideas off each other, there's value there. If everything turns into like, hey, all I need to see is that piece of paper and I'm good. And I don't need to put it on an agenda for us to know he got the piece of paper, planning's aware, we're gonna send it on once we get your acknowledgement. Kevin, did you, other than the drainage issues that you brought up, anything else with this one? If they are able to satisfy engineering's comments that we've heard today, which, you know, is basically, we're kind of commenting broadly on the topic of drainage.
Neighbors, the street,
Yeah.
water coming from the street.
If they satisfy Joe and they satisfy fire, do you guys need to see this at TRC again? Okay.
No.
Sounds good. And they need to satisfy planning on a number of things too. Is there anything that we didn't jump into that might have been on your punch list, Alex? Do you guys care about the location of the dumpster? Do you guys mind much if the dumpster is fenced but placed right there?
Away from the building.
Well, right now it's next to it. And not quite touching it, but pretty close.
What's the distance? I mean, as a rule, we don't like to see dumpsters in the building.
They put a note on a plan. We don't even need to get it out, but they had basically a carve out here where the fence did something like that. And they just they didn't put a dimension.
Touch the corner of the building, I'll be very close to it.
There's a ton of research out there, a ton of information out there that fire service has encountered numerous multi-alarm fires that start in a dumpster that's adjacent to the building.
One in North Carolina killed 6 firefighters.
Yep.
So is there a
The,
comment we'd want to see a revised dumpster location in the circumstance?
We certainly further away from the building would be,
I can tell you from
Prefer-
planning's perspective, now we don't have as much of the technical, but for me, from an aesthetic perspective, I don't love the idea of dumpsters right in front of buildings. I agree, it's fenced, so I appreciate that, but I don't love that.
They can't put it in the back and anywhere.
Well, their limit of disturbance, I think they're trying to maintain a like only working here, but this is paved.
Right, it's only asphalt. So-
Could it go here?
yeah, and I would have to look, the fire code determines
What do you think, Joe?
distance on those.
The only thing is, you might.
That's
cut
why
down
you
Do this to you,
your
Doug, but I
turning
got another meeting.
radius.
That's
so-
why your fire.
Yeah, you gotta go?
Soon.
Okay. We're
I know
almost
you
wrapped
wanted
up.
to do the street lighting thing. Give me a call on.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
meet again.
Okay,
What
yeah,
about if they
and
just put it over here?
Well, that would,
It's not gonna be
That's not-
advantageous to a 3-story building, have to carry it.
Right.
is that all?
And the length.
Is this is all the same company?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I do agree. I mean, I bet you, I think there is a reasonable desire to want to put it somewhere near this building so that the guy's not carrying a trash bag back and forth.
Yeah, and they're throwing away combustible material, cardboard boxes, things like that, yeah.
I bet you that this thing gets locked. Cause you know what happens if you allow an
Oh,
open dumpster at a
absolutely.
storage
It's gotta
location?
be just for general.
Yeah, it's
you
gotta
know,
be for
yeah,
their
yeah.
internal purposes. This is just for
Is
the
that how
guys that
big
are
it is?
running the
The
site.
dumpster, how big is it? How many yard?
No,
I
they
don't
didn't
know.
state. They actually they didn't draw it on the plan. They just pointed at it and said, we'd like to do the dumpster here.
So
So,
I guess that's
Yeah,
another
okay.
question, how big?
Probably
Probably
a front loader
5.
type thing, you know, so.
yeah, I would assume it's a standard
Maybe
dumpster.
we could push them. To put it over
Would you
here.
be comfortable there?
Yes,
Okay. Your goal would be, is there a minimum distance between the building and the dumpster that you think is?
probably
appropriate?
30 feet.
Ooh, That might be tough to get.
Well,
The further you push it this way, the more then you're actually losing fire access in and around this turn.
What about on this corner near the end of the access road?
What do you mean? Here?
Not that far, but.
So this is.
Here?
Somewhere in that vicinity?
well, they want relief from them parking spaces. Can we push it back?
Let's let them come up with a
Yeah.
place. We can always
Okay.
say yes.
So basically, the desire is greater distance between the dumpster and the building. That'll be a comment. Alex, you might capture that. And then relocate it out of the front of the building area. I personally would like to get into the habit of telling everybody, you know, especially this is viewable, and they have trees here, but they're getting cut down. So we're gonna see a lot more on the site than we do today, and I'd rather not have dumpsters be the first
Every
thing
time
you
I
see.
come down 117 into Washington Village, 1208, the dumpster's in the middle of the parking lot. And it came before us and we settled by putting a fence around it. And I went, that is the ugliest thing going, but
Is Washington Village where the golf course is?
oh, well,
Mm,
us old timers refer to the middle of Coventry or
Main Street,
Main and South Main is Washington Village.
Okay,
But Washington Village was the old golf course.
you're talking to one there, so,
course, it's used to work on.
Silver Lake.
I think we're good.
No.
Do you have anything else on that?
That's even, don't get me started on that one,
Say,
but.
Uh,
Oh, 1208 Main Street, the big block, and then next to it, you've got
Alright.
the.
Oh,
The
yeah.
old chicken coops
The
that are
chicken
turned into,
Yes,
turned into a pop.
but at least it's not right on the building.
No,
any other final comments or questions on that one?
Mhm.
So the comments that we gathered are very helpful. Planning staff will use its discretion. If everything we get back from the applicant is straightforward, then we will work with each individual member. If engineering might give us follow-up comments, fire might give us follow-up comments based on getting more information. If we don't think this needs to come in front of TRC, we'll use our discretion as long as we satisfy those members.
Mhm.
I think that concludes our meeting. I will consider this meeting, unless there's any other further comments, questions in general. I will consider this meeting of the Technical Review Committee adjourned. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Alex. 308.